The whispering edge of the galaxy. The Nexus horizon drifted through the cold silence of deep space, its hull gleaming faintly against the scattered light of distant stars. Captain Elias Carter stood at the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, as he gazed at the endless expanse before him. Earth lay millions of kilometers behind, but the weight of its legacy pressed heavily on his shoulders. Humanity had clawed its way into the stars through ingenuity and sheer stubbornness, but peace was never guaranteed. The galaxy, as it turned out, was crowded, and not all its inhabitants welcomed humanity's ambition. "Captain," came a voice from the intercom. Lieutenant Avery's calm yet urgent tone sliced through the quiet hum of the ship's systems. "Long-range sensors are picking up something unusual. You might want to see this." Elias stepped away from the viewport and moved swiftly to the bridge. The crew snapped to attention at his arrival, but he waved them down. "What are we looking at?" Avery's fingers danced over the controls, bringing a holographic projection to life in the center of the room. A swirling anomaly hung in space like a tear in reality itself, pulsating with faint energy signatures. "It appeared on the outer edge of the Epsilon Belt, sir. No known galactic faction claims responsibility, and there's no sign of construction. It's just there." Elias narrowed his eyes. Space anomalies weren't unheard of, but the timing was suspicious. The last time humanity stumbled upon something unexplained, it triggered an incident that nearly sparked war with the Xarn Dominion. "Send a probe," he ordered. "Full diagnostics. I want to know if it breathes." A ripple of quiet laughter spread through the bridge, but the tension remained. As the probe launched from the ship's lower bay, Elias watched it shrink into the distance, a small flicker against the anomaly's imposing form. "Sir," Avery said after a moment, her brow furrowed, "we're receiving something. A transmission, but it's fragmented. It almost sounds." A crackling voice cut through the static. "To any vessel, this is the Voltarian research ship Starwind. Emergency distress signal. We are under attack. Repeat, under attack." The voice faded, replaced by silence. The bridge froze. Elias felt the tension coil tighter, like a string about to snap. The Voltarians were peaceful explorers, known more for their scientific curiosity than aggression. An attack on them could mean one of two things: pirates, or something far worse. "Trace that signal. Now." Elias' voice brooked no argument. Avery's eyes flickered across the display. "Coordinates locked. It's coming from within the anomaly." The crew exchanged wary glances. Elias exhaled slowly. He could feel the unspoken question hanging in the air. They all knew the risk. Anomalies could swallow ships whole. But the weight of the distress call lingered in Elias' mind. Humanity had been the underdog once, relying on distant voices in the dark to survive. "We go in," Elias said at last, his tone firm. "Prep for anomaly breach. If someone's calling for help, we answer." The Nexus horizon tilted its nose toward the swirling void and pushed forward, engines roaring against the stillness of space. As the ship approached, the anomaly's swirling edges parted, almost as if welcoming them inside. A faint ripple danced across the hull, and the stars outside flickered out of existence. For a brief moment, everything was silent. Then alarms blared. "Captain, I'm picking up debris. Voltarian hull fragments, scattered across the area." Elias' heart sank. He stared out at the fractured remains drifting in the void. Pieces of shattered metal glinted dimly, but no sign of the Starwind itself. "Survivors?" Elias asked, though he already feared the answer. "None detected yet, sir. But—" Avery's voice trailed off. "There's something else. A large structure deeper inside the anomaly." Elias leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. On screen, the holographic display shifted, revealing a monolithic construct hidden within the anomaly's folds. Its dark surface was etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly as if alive. "That's no natural formation," Elias muttered. "Negative, sir," This structure, it's ancient. A sudden movement caught his eye. Shadows flickered along the edges of the structure, faint, but unmistakably ships. Not just any ships. Warships. The crew's murmur of alarm filled the bridge. Hostiles. Unknown configuration. Heavily armed. Avery confirmed, voice tight. Elias straightened. Bring weapons online. I want shields raised, and someone get me comms with those ships. We're not leaving without answers. As the Nexus Horizons systems hummed to life, Elias fixed his gaze on the approaching vessels. Something told him this was just the beginning. The silent battlefield. The warships circled the ancient structure like predators guarding their kill. Their sleek, angular designs hinted at technology far beyond anything humanity had encountered. Each ship moved with a quiet, deliberate grace, exuding menace without firing a single shot. Captain Elias Carter stood rigid at the center of the Nexus Horizons bridge, his gaze locked onto the display as the alien vessels closed the distance. The shattered remains of the Starwind floated between them like the bones of some cosmic leviathan. Any response to our hails? Elias asked, though he already suspected the answer. Lieutenant Avery shook her head. Nothing, sir. They're ignoring us. Elias glanced at the tactical overlay. The alien ships had formed a blockade, cutting off the Nexus Horizons retreat. It wasn't a direct threat, but it was a message. They weren't welcome here. Options, Elias said, turning to his second-in-command, Commander Merrick. The burly officer stroked his beard thoughtfully. We could attempt to maneuver around them, but they'd intercept us before we get close to the structure. I'd wager they want us to leave. Elias's jaw tightened. Leaving wasn't an option, not with the wreckage of a Voltarian ship drifting lifeless before them. Avery scanned for escape pods, survivors, debris, anything that might still be transmitting. Avery's hands moved quickly over the console. The bridge remained silent, save for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Captain, she said after a long pause, her tone hesitant. There's something. I'm detecting a faint energy signature roughly 2 kilometers from the wreckage. Elias' brow furrowed. Clarify. What kind of energy signature? Avery adjusted the display, zooming in on a fragment of twisted hull. It's consistent with a Voltarian stasis pod. Power levels are critically low, but it's still intact. Elias felt a flicker of hope. Commander Merrick, prepare a retrieval shuttle. I want that pod aboard within 10 minutes. Merrick hesitated. Sir, with those warships out there. I know the risks, Elias said firmly, but we don't abandon survivors, not while there's still a chance. Merrick nodded, barking orders to the crew. Within moments, a sleek retrieval craft detached from the Nexus Horizons underbelly, cutting across the void toward the drifting stasis pod. Elias watched anxiously as the shuttle maneuvered between the wreckage. The alien warships remained still, like wolves eyeing intruders at the edge of their territory. Keep them on screen, Elias ordered. If they so much as twitch, I want weapons ready. The tension on the bridge thickened as the shuttle drew closer to the pod. We have visual. Merrick's voice crackled over the comm. Pod's intact, but it's wedged between fragments of the Starwind. We're cutting it loose now. Elias' eyes narrowed as he watched the feed. The alien ships hadn't moved, but something about the situation gnawed at him. Sir, Avery spoke softly, her eyes fixed on the scanners. I don't think those ships are piloted. Elias turned sharply. Explain. She expanded the display, focusing on the nearest vessel. There are no life signs aboard. No heat signatures. No organic traces. It's like they're running on autopilot. Elias exchanged a glance with Merrick, whose expression darkened. Ghost ships, Merrick muttered. Great, just what we need. Elias frowned. Ghost ships didn't fire on civilian research vessels. Someone was controlling them, or worse, something. Continue the retrieval, Elias said, but stay sharp. Moments later, the retrieval shuttle's mechanical arms latched onto the stasis pod, gently pulling it free from the debris. "We have it," Merrick's voice confirmed. "Returning to the horizon now." Elias exhaled slowly. But just as the shuttle banked toward the ship, a low hum vibrated through the Nexus Horizon's hull. "Captain," Avery whispered, her face pale. "The structure. It's powering up." The alien construct at the heart of the anomaly flickered to life, glowing patterns rippling across its surface. A beam of crackling energy erupted from its core, lancing out into the darkness. "Evasive," Elias barked. The horizon twisted sharply, the beam narrowly missing the ship's engines. "Shields at maximum," Merrick shouted. The alien warships stirred for the first time, engines igniting as they formed a tight perimeter around the structure. "They're not attacking us," Avery said in disbelief. "They're defending the structure." Elias watched the construct carefully, his mind racing. "This isn't random," he muttered. "Someone triggered it, and I'd bet my life that someone's inside." Avery's eyes widened. "Sir, you think the Starwind's crew?" Elias nodded grimly. "They may still be alive in there. And if we don't act fast, they won't stay that way." The bridge fell into a tense hush as the Nexus Horizon drifted toward the anomaly's heart, warships trailing silently in its wake, into the maw of the forgotten. The Nexus Horizon hovered at the edge of the anomaly's heart, its lights flickering against the obsidian black hull of the alien construct. The swirling patterns across the ancient structure pulsed like veins beneath translucent skin, breathing with a rhythm that seemed almost aware. Elias Carter stood at the bridge's viewport, feeling the weight of what lay before them. This was no ordinary wreck. The construct was ancient, older than any star map in the Horizon's database, and somewhere within, the faintest echo of life called out, tangled with the ghosts of the Starwind. "Commander Merrick," Elias said, his voice cutting through the hum of the bridge, "prepare a boarding team. I'm leading this one." Merrick straightened, eyes narrowing. "Sir, with all due respect." "I know," Elias interrupted, holding his gaze. "It's a risk, but the Voltarians sent out a distress call. There's a chance survivors are inside that thing. We can't ignore it." Merrick hesitated, but eventually nodded. "I'll suit up." The boarding shuttle departed from the Nexus Horizon 10 minutes later, cutting a slow arc toward the anomaly's core. The alien warships remained distant shadows, watching but not interfering. Elias couldn't decide if that comforted or unsettled him. The closer they drew to the construct, the more the shadows of the anomaly seemed to deepen. The faint, glowing patterns along the structure shifted as if reacting to their approach. "Captain," Avery's voice crackled through the comm, "we're losing signal clarity the deeper you go. Something in that structure is scrambling communications." "Noted," Elias replied, gripping the side of his seat as the shuttle docked at the construct's outer shell. "Maintain a lock on our signal for as long as possible. If we lose contact for more than 6 hours, we'll come looking for you," Avery finished. Elias smiled faintly. "I'd expect nothing less." As the airlock hissed open, the team stepped into the unknown. The corridor of echoes. The interior of the construct was colder than Elias expected. The walls shimmered faintly beneath the glow of their suit lights, reflecting distorted images of the boarding team as they moved deeper into the structure. "Readings?" Elias asked quietly, the sound of his voice unnervingly loud against the silence. Lieutenant Cade, the team's Xenotech specialist, glanced at his handheld scanner. "This place. It's bizarre, sir. The walls aren't metallic or organic. It's like liquid light solidified. Nothing I've seen before." Elias ran his gloved hand along the wall surface. It felt smooth, but as he pulled away, faint ripples distorted the light for just a moment. Merrick grunted. "I don't like it. Places like this don't get abandoned for no reason." Elias couldn't argue with that. The corridor stretched on endlessly, twisting at impossible angles that seemed to shift the longer they stared. Then, at last, they found it. A massive chamber, its ceiling vanishing into shadows. At the center of the room was the Voltarian stasis pod, still intact. "There," Merrick said, relief flickering in his voice. But as they stepped closer, the patterns on the walls flickered violently. A low hum vibrated through the floor beneath their feet. "Movement," Cade shouted, raising his weapon. Shapes emerged from the far corners of the chamber. Tall, humanoid figures, their forms shifting like smoke wrapped in black armor. "Identify yourselves," Elias called out, stepping between the pod and the approaching entities. No response. The figures moved with eerie precision, spreading out to encircle the pod. Merrick raised his rifle, the soft whine of its charge filling the room. Hostile. Elias' eyes narrowed as the figures halted, seemingly awaiting something. "I'm not sure," he muttered. "They haven't attacked." Cade frowned at his scanner. "Captain, I think these things are connected to the structure. Their readings match the wall's energy patterns." Elias slowly lowered his weapon. "They're part of it." He stepped forward cautiously, holding up an open palm. The figures made no move to stop him. As Elias reached the stasis pod, he brushed away the frost clouding the glass and froze. Inside lay a Voltarian woman, her face peaceful, but her features glowed faintly, almost as if she was partially merging with the pod itself. Cade's breath caught. "Captain, I don't think we're just rescuing someone. I think we're disturbing something ancient." Elias clenched his jaw. There was no turning back now. "Prep the pod for transport," Elias ordered. "We're getting her out of here." As Cade worked to disengage the pod, the figures didn't interfere. They merely stood as silent sentinels. But as the locks disengaged with a final hiss, the entire chamber shook. The ancient warships outside suddenly activated, their weapons powering up as if responding to the disturbance. Avery's voice crackled faintly through the comm. "Captain, the ships outside just changed formation. They're charging weapons." Elias gritted his teeth. "We're leaving. Now." Merrick and Cade carefully carried the pod as the team sprinted back toward the shuttle. Behind them, the corridor's walls began to twist and shift, sealing behind them like a living organism closing its wounds. The shuttle burst from the construct moments later, engines flaring as they raced back toward the Nexus horizon. On the bridge, Elias barely had time to sit before the alien warships began to close in. "Raise shields and prep for jump," Elias barked. "Whatever we just took from them, they want it back." The Nexus horizon's engines roared to life, the swirling edge of the anomaly looming ahead. "Take us home." As the ship surged forward, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that whatever they had awoken wasn't finished with them yet. The sleeping giant stirs. The Nexus horizon ripped free from the anomaly's edge, trailing arcs of blue energy that crackled along its hull like ghostly fingers reluctant to let go. For a brief moment, the ship hung in the void, stars blinking back into view as the swirling shadows of the anomaly collapsed behind them. But peace was fleeting. Multiple contacts emerging from the anomaly. Avery's voice snapped through the bridge, her hands flying across the controls. 5. No, 6 ships. Same configuration as the ones we saw near the construct. Elias Carter leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing at the tactical display. The alien warships surged after them, gliding with eerie precision through the rift. "They're not just following us," Commander Merrick muttered, arms crossed. "They're hunting." Elias' gaze flickered to the medical bay feed displayed in the corner of the screen. The Voltarian woman lay inside the stasis pod, pale and unmoving, but the strange glow beneath her skin had faded slightly. "Status on the pod?" Elias asked. Dr. Lorne's calm voice filtered through the comm. "Stable, but the energy readings around her are fluctuating. I've never seen anything like it, Captain. The pod itself isn't just keeping her alive. It's interacting with her at a molecular level." Elias frowned. "Explain." Lorne hesitated. "It's almost as if she's part of the pod. Her body isn't entirely solid. Not anymore." Merrick swore under his breath. "Captain, This is starting to feel like a bad idea. Elias couldn't disagree, but he wasn't about to abandon someone they'd fought to rescue. "Sir," Avery interrupted, "the ships are gaining. They'll intercept us in 3 minutes." Elias sat back, considering their options. The Horizon was well armed for exploration, but in a firefight, 6 unknown warships outgunned them. "Prepare to initiate the splicer drive," Elias ordered. "I want coordinates plotted for the nearest secure human outpost." Avery hesitated. "Sir, if we engage the drive this close to the anomaly, the residual energy could cause interference. We might overshoot the jump point or—" "We don't have time for might," Elias cut in. "Set the drive to engage in 90 seconds. Give me as much distance from those ships as you can in the meantime." Avery's nod was sharp. "Understood." The Nexus Horizon's engines flared, the ship accelerating as the alien vessels tightened their formation behind them. Elias watched as the display flickered with warning symbols. The alien ships were locking weapons. "They're preparing to fire," Merrick growled. Elias' knuckles whitened against the armrest. "Avery, send out a wideband broadcast on all frequencies." She glanced back in confusion. "Captain, do it." The comlink crackled to life, transmitting Elias' voice across the void. "To the ships in pursuit, this is Captain Elias Carter of the Nexus Horizon. We have retrieved survivors from the Voltarian vessel Starwind. If your intent is hostile, be advised, humanity will not stand down. We do not abandon those in need." Silence answered him. Merrick shook his head. "That's cute, Captain, but I doubt they." A sudden flicker in the display cut him off. One of the pursuing ships began to decelerate, breaking formation with the others. Avery's eyes widened. "Captain, that ship is powering down weapons." Elias' brow furrowed. They understood. But the relief was short-lived. The remaining 5 warships surged forward, their lead vessel unleashing a lance of crimson energy. The beam slammed into the Horizon's rear shields, sending tremors through the ship. "Shields at 80%, Avery reported. "Engage point defense systems," Elias ordered. "Target engines, not hulls. I don't want to start a war if we can avoid it." Merrick arched an eyebrow. "Feels like we're already there." The ship's autocannons roared to life, bursts of blue fire spitting from the Horizon's flanks. 2 of the alien warships weaved away from the barrage, while the others pressed forward undeterred. Elias' eyes flicked to the splicer drive countdown. 30 seconds. Another blast rocked the Horizon, and sparks erupted from one of the rear consoles. "Sir, the engines are taking a hit," Avery called. Splicer drive integrity dropping to 70%. Elias gritted his teeth. They wouldn't last another full minute. "Merrick, divert auxiliary power to the rear thrusters. I want maximum acceleration toward the jump point." The Nexus Horizon surged forward, outrunning the slower warships, but not by much. The anomaly flickered behind them like an open maw, spitting out faint tendrils of light that licked at the Horizon's tail. 15 seconds. "Captain," Avery's voice cut in sharply. "The Voltarian woman. She's awake." Elias froze. "Repeat that." A feed from the med bay flickered onto the screen, showing the stasis pod as its glass cracked open with a hiss. The woman inside slowly lifted her head, her eyes glowing faintly as if the energy from the pod now pulsed within her veins. Her gaze met the camera directly, and for a chilling second, it felt as though she was staring through the screen at Elias himself. "The construct is not your enemy," she spoke softly, her voice carrying across the comm without the microphone activating. "But if you do not leave now, you will awaken something far worse." The bridge fell silent. "Splicer drive engaging," Avery whispered, almost reverently. As the countdown struck 0, the Horizon's engines howled, and the ship dissolved into a stream of light, leaving the anomaly and the warships far behind. Elias sat back, exhaling as the familiar comfort of normal space enveloped them. But the woman's words lingered in his mind. Something far worse. Whatever secrets the anomaly held, Ilias knew they hadn't escaped them. Not yet. The message in her eyes. The Nexus horizon drifted silently in the cold vacuum of space, far from the anomaly's reach. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction, but no one on the bridge felt at ease. The tension that had followed them through the splicer jump lingered like a shadow. Captain Elias Carter sat in his chair, staring at the holofeed of the medbay. The Voltarian woman was awake now, though she hadn't moved from the pod. Her eyes glowed faintly, gold light swirling beneath her irises as if she carried fragments of the anomaly within her. The crew kept their distance. Even Dr. Lorne monitored her from behind a partition of reinforced glass. She hasn't spoken since the jump. Lorne's voice filtered through the comm, barely above a whisper. Vitals are stable, but her cellular structure is in flux. It's evolving. Elias frowned. Explain. Lorne adjusted his display, showing close-up scans of her tissue. Her body isn't entirely biological anymore. It's partially energy-based, almost as if the anomaly altered her at a molecular level. Whatever happened to her out there, she's not the same species she was when she left Valteria. Elias' gaze shifted to the woman's face. Her expression was calm. Too calm for someone who had narrowly escaped death. She knows something, he muttered. Agreed, Lorne said. But I tread carefully, Captain. We don't know how much of her is still Valterian, or if that part of her is even in control. Elias stood. I'm going down there. Merrick, standing nearby, stepped forward. Captain, is that wise? If she's something else now, she could be dangerous. Elias glanced at him. So was the anomaly. So were those warships. We didn't back down from them. Merrick sighed but relented. Your funeral, sir. The encounter. The med bay was unnervingly quiet when Elias stepped through the reinforced doors. Dr. Lorne watched from behind his station, clearly relieved that the captain was taking point. The Voltarian woman sat upright in the pod, her gaze following Elias as he approached. The closer he came, the more vividly the glow in her eyes shimmered. You're not afraid, she said softly, her voice carrying a melodic hum beneath the words. Elias stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. Should I be? She tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question. Perhaps. Elias didn't blink. You sent that message, didn't you? Right before we jumped. She met his gaze, and for a brief moment, Elias felt an odd tug in his chest, like her stare was reaching into something deeper than flesh. I warned you, she replied. Not because I wanted to, but because the construct didn't want you to die. Elias narrowed his eyes. What do you mean, the construct? It's a machine, not a living thing. A faint smile tugged at her lips. That's where you're wrong. The construct, it's not a weapon. It's a prison. Elias' muscles tensed. Prison. She nodded slowly, her fingers brushing the glass surface of the pod. Long ago, something ancient was sealed inside. Something older than my people, older than even the Confederacy's records. Elias crossed his arms tighter. You're saying we pulled you out of a prison designed to hold whatever this entity is. Her gaze darkened. I wasn't the prisoner. I was the key. The silence that followed was deafening. Elias took a step closer. Explain. Her golden eyes glowed brighter. The Voltarian people didn't stumble upon that anomaly by accident. We were searching for it. The entity inside, the sleeping giant, as some of our legends call it, is capable of reshaping entire star systems. My people feared it could awaken, so we built the construct around it, to contain it. Elias exhaled sharply. And you. I was part of the failsafe. If the construct's systems began to weaken, my presence would stabilize the anomaly. I was meant to stay there until the end of my natural life. Elias frowned deeply. Then why did the Starwind send a distress call? Her expression hardened, the soft glow of her eyes flickering like candlelight in the wind. Because something else woke up inside that construct. Something that doesn't belong. The silent awakening. The weight of her words settled over the room like ice. Elias broke the silence. And now, her gaze locked with his. It's free. The warships you saw, they weren't attacking me or you. They were responding to whatever breached the prison. Elias felt a sinking sensation. He'd thought they had escaped the anomaly's grip, but in truth, they might have carried part of it with them. Is this entity following us? He asked. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Not yet. It doesn't fully understand the limits of its freedom. But it will. Elias' jaw tightened. Then what do we do? For the first time since she'd awoken, her expression softened. You'll need to take me to the Confederacy's capital. Merrick's voice cut in from the comm. Captain, I'd advise against letting her off this ship until we know more. She interrupted, speaking calmly but firmly. I am not a threat to you. But the entity inside the anomaly will become one if we don't warn the other factions. Humanity's presence in the stars is still fragile. If this thing reaches inhabited space. Her voice trailed off, but the message was clear. Elias exchanged a long look with Merrick through the med-bay glass. Finally, Elias turned back to the woman. We'll take you to the capital. But if you feel something shifting, if that entity starts hunting us, you let me know immediately. She inclined her head gently. I promise. As Elias left the med-bay, his thoughts churned with the weight of what lay ahead. The Nexus Horizon was no longer just an exploration vessel. It was the bearer of a warning, carrying the only person who could stand between humanity and whatever had begun to stir in the depths of the anomaly. And deep down, Elias knew this was only the beginning. Shadows on the horizon. The Nexus Horizon sailed through the void like a ghost, its engines humming softly against the backdrop of endless stars. But inside the ship, the air felt heavier, like the weight of unseen eyes pressing against the hull. Captain Elias Carter sat alone in his quarters, staring at the datapad resting on his desk. Lines of Voltarian script scrolled endlessly across the screen, a translation of the construct's internal systems pulled from the woman's stasis pod. Despite the Confederacy's advanced linguistic AI, half of the information remained indecipherable. A prison, a key, and something else. Elias rubbed his temples, exhaustion gnawing at the edges of his mind. Sleep had been elusive since their escape from the anomaly. Even with the distance they had put between them, a sense of unfinished business haunted him. A chime at the door broke his thoughts. Come in. Commander Merrick stepped inside, carrying a mug of black coffee that steamed faintly in the cool air. He placed it on Elias' desk without a word and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You look worse than I expected, Merrick grunted. Elias smirked tiredly. I feel worse. He picked up the mug, savoring the warmth against his hands. Merrick's eyes flicked to the datapad. Still trying to make sense of that. Trying is generous, Elias replied, taking a slow sip. There's too much missing. The parts we can read don't paint a full picture. And I get the feeling the Voltarians didn't leave breadcrumbs for a reason. Merrick frowned. You trust her? Elias lowered the mug and met Merrick's gaze. I trust that she's telling the truth. But I don't trust what she's become. Whatever happened to her inside that construct, it changed her. Merrick nodded thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. She's been staring out the viewport in the med-bay, almost like she's waiting for something. Elias' eyes narrowed. Waiting for what? Merrick shrugged. You'd have to ask her. Elias drained the last of the coffee and set the mug down with a quiet clink. I think I will. The watcher at the glass. Elias found her exactly where Merrick said she would be, standing by the med-bay's main viewport, gazing out into the black, as if she could see something beyond the stars. Her long silver hair shimmered faintly beneath the soft glow of the ship's lights. The golden hue in her eyes flickered gently, like twin embers that refused to extinguish. Elias approached slowly. Can't sleep either. She didn't turn, but her reflection caught his eye in the glass. I don't sleep the way I used to, she replied softly. Not since the anomaly. Elias stopped beside her, arms folded as he followed her gaze out into the vast emptiness. Merrick said, "You've been watching the stars. Looking for something." Her head dipped slightly. "I'm waiting." "For what?" She hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "The anomaly isn't gone, Captain. You know that. It's still out there, just beyond what your sensors can perceive." Elias' jaw tightened. "We jumped nearly 4 systems away. How could it still be following us?" Her glowing eyes met his, unblinking. "Because it's not following the ship, it's following me." The realization sank into Elias like ice water. "You said it wouldn't pursue us," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I said it wouldn't understand the limits of its freedom," she corrected softly. "But I am the key. And now that I've left, the prison seal is unraveling. The anomaly, it's stretching, searching." Elias exhaled slowly. "You think it will reach us?" Her gaze drifted back to the stars. "It already is." Disturbance in the dark. The alarms began faintly, soft pulses of light across the bridge consoles, growing steadily more intense. "Captain to the bridge." Avery's voice crackled over the comm, tinged with urgency. Elias arrived moments later, Merrick, and the Voltarian woman close behind. The holographic display at the center of the bridge spun with distorted energy readings. Avery looked up, eyes wide. "Sir, we've detected a spatial anomaly forming off the starboard bow. It wasn't there 30 seconds ago." Elias' heart sank. "Show me." The viewport flickered to life, revealing the black expanse of space rippling unnaturally. A dark sphere hung in the distance, swirling with faint tendrils of light that coiled outward like drifting smoke. Merrick leaned forward. "That's the same signature as the construct." Elias' eyes narrowed. "Distance. Approximately 200,000 kilometers in closing," Avery replied. "It's growing, Captain." The Voltarian woman stepped closer to the viewport, her gaze fixed on the anomaly. Her breath fogged faintly against the glass. "It found us faster than I expected," she murmured. Elias turned sharply toward her. "What happens if it catches us?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "It won't destroy the ship." Merrick scowled. "That's reassuring." She glanced at him, her glowing eyes flickering. "It won't need to. It will take me. And once it does, nothing will be able to seal it again." Elias didn't hesitate. "Avery, charge the splicer drive. We're jumping to the Outer Confederacy relay station. Full burn." Avery's hands flew over the controls. "Understood. Drive charging. Estimated jump in 2 minutes." As the Nexus horizon veered away from the anomaly, Elias kept his eyes on the display. The sphere continued to swell, tendrils reaching out across the void as if grasping for something just beyond its reach. The Voltarian woman turned to Elias. "You can't outrun it forever." Elias met her gaze, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. "No," he said quietly, "but I'll hold it off for as long as I can."